Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Well, today I'll mention about the excess and deficiency of all slides of the project that I have created for teaching English as for language course. Okay, we begin for the first slide. Okay, for the first slide, I have excess and deficiency. So for the first is about excess. So on this slide, for the main title and sub-chapter, I use different font and color so that student can easily distinguish these two sections. So the icon used in this slide has related with the class level that I teach, namely age, grade, junior high school student. And the last one, I also don't use too many icons so it doesn't look crowded with a lot of icon and color, so it looks beautiful, simple, and attractive. So what about deficiency? Okay, for deficiency in this slide, it is precisely in the date section. I think I didn't add the letter RD after the number 23 as the date. It should be in the date after the number 23 with the letter RD at the top after the number 23. Then, on this slide, I didn't mention to whom this learning material was shown. I should have listed the grade level I will be teaching. Okay, we jump to the next slide.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Hasna Harziyah, and here I will teach you about an English lesson. Our chapter today about special text on subbab, giving and asking information.
Alright, for slide 2, I have excess and deficiency. Okay, for excess, I use good body language so that the lesson on this slide look interesting and not monotone. I also implemented a syntax order that correspond to the lesson plan I choose. So then the last one, I use a whiteboard which is big enough for a student to reach the signs. Okay, how about deficiency? For my deficiency in this slide, I didn't write the word RD on the date which I wrote on the whiteboard. This is as the same on the first slide, except that the first slide in the PowerPoint section. So the second slide, it is writing on the whiteboard. Okay, we jump to the next slide. Okay, for the third slide, it is mentioned about learning objective, and then I have excess and deficiency for this slide. Okay, for excess, I include the right learning objective and in accordance with the lesson plan that I have chosen. So the last one, I use element icon that match the learning material so that it look like there is related or continuity between the material I convey and the material I display. So how about deficiency? For deficiency in this slide, I didn't signal the keyword in the two learning objectives available on the screen display. I should have been able to give a signal in the form of red in the word to identify and the word to create to, so make it easier for students to recognize the learning objective that were implemented and emphasized. Okay, we jump to the next slide.
Okay, for beginning our lesson today, I will tell you about our learning objective. There are two learning objectives from our lesson today. First one, students are able to identify definition, function, social function, text structure, language feature, and detailed information on greeting card text. So second, students are able to create a written text which combines text structure, social function, and language feature from several special text in greeting card by giving us the information about special day and the context of it. Okay.
Alright, for slide 4, for the axis of this slide, I use body language that match what I say. This certainly make the learning video that show more interesting and not monotone. So for deficiency in this slide, I think this part of the slide has no drawback because it is in accordance with what was instructed in the lesson plan that I chose. Okay, we jump to the next slide. Okay, for this slide, I have exist and deficiency. For exist, I use an example of clear greeting card so that it's easy for students to observe. This is in accordance with what teacher should do when providing understanding to students by using easy examples. And then I have also used the question mark icon on this slide as a signal that I'm asking something, so it's easy for students to understand my instruction. And how about deficiency? Okay, for deficiency in this slide, I don't use icons that match this slide, so this slide look empty. I should be able to use other icons that relate to the purpose of this slide so that it helps eliminate the point on the slide and look interesting and not monotone. Okay, we jump to the next slide.
Okay, student, we start our lesson today. For the first time, I'll show you a picture that you can see on the slide. Is a picture visible on your screen? Alright. What do you think about this picture? Is there anyone knows? Alright, I'll tell you. This picture is a greeting card picture. Why? Yes, because we will discuss it in this lesson.
Alright, for this slide, I have exist and deficiency. Okay, for the first about exist, I'm able to use language that is easy for students to understand so as to facilitate the process of delivering material on this slide. So I use natural body language so it doesn't look monotone and attract the attention of the student I teach. Okay, how about deficiency for this slide? I think on this slide I did a good job, so I don't find any flaw for this slide. Okay, we jump to the next slide. Okay, for this slide I have exist and deficiency. Okay, for the first is exist. I use simple and precise icon on this slide so that it look attractive and not too crowded. So for deficiency in this slide, I give the same font color between the vocabulary, pronunciation, and the meaning of the vocabularies. I should be able to use different account between the vocabulary of writing, pronunciation, and the meaning of vocabulary so that students can distinguish the three parts of this slide. Okay, we jump to the next material.
Okay, student, now I'll give you some vocabularies which are related to our lesson today. Okay, listen to my instruction. When I scream the vocabularies, all students may follow me by screaming it. Did you understand about my instruction? Alright, good job. Now, for the first vocabularies, graduate. All students follow me. Graduate, graduate, graduate. Okay, I was not the mean? Alright, good job. The meaning of graduate is lulus. Now we write on the whiteboard. Graduate.
Okay, for this slide, I have exist and deficiency. Okay, for the first exist, for this slide, I have used the right body language in conveying the material in this slide so that it attracts student attention and seem to master the material that I convey in this slide. So I was also able to master the class so that it looked natural in conveying the material and attracted the attention of students in the class. And then the last one, I wrote 3 vocabularies clearly on the whiteboard using a black marker so that students could easily see the vocabularies. Okay, we see for the 3 vocabularies clearly wrote on the whiteboard. Okay, at the last part. Sorry.
Okay, student, now I'll give you some vocabularies which are related to our lesson today. Okay, listen to my instruction. When I screen the vocabularies, all students may follow me by screening it. Did you understand about my instruction? Alright, good job. Now, for the first vocabularies. Very good.
Alright, we jump to the last video, which shown us how 3 vocabularies wrote on the whiteboard clearly. Alright. Okay. We wait for the second. Okay, sorry, my network is unstable, I think. But we see on the whiteboard that I wrote 3 vocabularies clearly. Okay. Okay, I think we jump to the next material because I think my network is unstable for play this video. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Okay, student, now I'll give you...
Okay, for this slide, I have also the deficiency of this slide. I didn't pay attention to the clean lines of the blackboard or the whiteboard I was using. So there were still marker on the right side on the whiteboard that interfered with student view. I should have been able to check and clean the whiteboard before starting the lesson. We can see on the right of the whiteboard here, there's some markers on the right side here. Alright, we jump to the next slide.
Okay, student, beside the vocabularies which are related to our lesson today, there are some important points of reading card that we will study today. Okay, you can see on the whiteboard here, there are 5 of important points from reading card. The first one is definition, so the second one is function, the next one is types, so the fourth is general structure, and the last one is language feature. And this all important point of reading card that we will study today.
Alright, for this slide, I'm also have exist and deficiency for this slide. For the first one, I tell you about exist. Okay, I show the keyword of the material to be studied on the whiteboard to make it easier for students to understand what discussion will be discussed in the video on this slide. So then I also use an emphasis on the sentence that we will study today to ensure that students really understand the keyword of the material written on the whiteboard, which is an important part that students need to know in this slide. Okay, for deficiency in this slide, the same as the previous slide. In this slide, there is an error in writing the date in which I did not add the letter RD to number 23 as the date in this slide. So it looks like there is an irregularity in writing the date. I should have added the letter RD above number 23 so that it looks complete and according to the rules that have been set in English. Okay, for the next deficiency, I did not pay attention to the scribbles of marker on the right side. Okay, here we can see on the right of whiteboard, there are scribble of marker which I should have cleaned or erased before teaching so as not to interfere with student eyesight, and this shortcoming in the same as the previous slide. Okay, we jump to the next slide. Okay, for this slide, I have exist and deficiency. Okay, for the first, I told you about exist. I use icons that are polite, so not vulgar, and unique, so that they match the little of the material I convey. Then I also use a different font color in the title of discussion and the name of the expert who emphasize the definition. Make it easier for students to focus on understanding the material presented in this slide. So, how about the efficiency for this slide? Okay, I think this slide is good enough and in accordance with the lesson plan that I have chosen, so I don't find any flaw or any deficiency in this slide. Okay, we jump to the next slide. Okay, in this slide, we mentioned about the function of greeting card. So, they exist for this slide. I use moving icon with different color on the number 1, 2, and 3 in the circle. This certainly make easier for students to understand what I mean in this slide. So, how about the efficiency for this slide? I give the same box color to each box so it's look monotone. So I should be able to give each box a different color so it doesn't look monotone. Maybe in the first box I can use purple color, then the second box I use red color, and the last one or the third box I use green color. Okay, we jump to the next slide. Okay, in this slide talk about type of greeting card. Okay, for this slide I have exist and deficiency like a previous slide. So for exist, I use a moving icon on this slide so it doesn't look stiff and monotone and certainly attract the attention of students. So I also use a background that is according with the learning materials so that it look like has a good coherence in accordance with the material presented. So about deficiency, I'm not good at giving icon at the bottom left and right of this slide so it look empty, and I should be able to add some simple icon in that section to make it look attractive and not empty like you see in the screen. Okay, we jump to the next slide.
Okay, student, now we begin to discuss the important point of greeting card. Okay, the first one is definition. Is there anyone know what is definition of greeting card? Alright, now I will tell you. Definition of greeting card, according to Purwati and Suraskara 2020, greeting card are short text containing prayer and wishes given to someone when they are celebrating an event or experiencing a particular event. So how about the function of greeting card? Also, according to Purwati and Yoster 2020, there are three functions of greeting card. The first one, to show our sympathy for someone. So the second one, to congratulate someone. And the last one is to give our prayer and our wishes for someone. So, the next one is types of greeting card. There are 9 types of greeting card. First one, public or national holiday card. So the second one, wedding card. The next one, birthday card. So baby born card. So thanking card. So condolence card. Congratulation card. Graduate card and getting well card. Okay, there are 9 types of greeting card that you can see on the slide.
Alright, for this slide, I have exist and deficiency. Okay, for the first about exist, I use good body language in conveying the material on this slide so that it look like I master the learning class. So I use clear language and not too fast in explaining the material on this slide. So it's make easier for students to digest and to digest the meaning of the material what I convey to the student. So how about the efficiency in this slide? Okay, the same as the previous slide. I didn't write the date on the blackboard correctly. It should be written on the 23, not only written with number 23, but there must be the addition of the letter RD on the top of the 23 number. So I'm not very careful about the clean lines of the whiteboard, so that the scribble on the right side of the whiteboard still have which of course interfere with the insight of focus of student in following the lesson on this slide. I should have been able to clean and check the condition of the whiteboard before starting the lesson, so that no scribble were left on the whiteboard that I use for learning on this slide. We can see the scribble of on the right side of the whiteboard here, okay, as the previous slide. Alright, we jump to the next slide. Alright, for this slide, mention you about generic structure of greeting card. Okay, in this slide I have exist and deficiency. So for exist, I use a moving icon in this slide so it's look interesting and not monotone. So I use icons that are not vulgar and of course in accordance with the material which I convey in this slide. So I give a complete explanation in this slide, especially on the part of the structure in the greeting card that I described in this slide. So I also use different font color in the title of the material or the title of the subchapter to make it easier for students to understand the explanation in this slide. For example, for the generic structure of greeting card, the generic structure as the general title, I give the font color red. So of this greeting card as a complement to the general title, I use white color. Then in the explanation of the generic structure, I also use an arrow icon with an orange color that leads to an explanation of the generic structure of greeting card to attract student focus in studying the material that I convey in this slide. So the last one, I give an example of a clear greeting card in this slide so that students can easily see and distinguish the structure of the greeting card in this slide. Okay, how about the efficiency for this slide? I think this slide is in accordance with the lesson plan that I conveyed, so that I don't find any deficiency in this slide. Okay, we jump to the next slide.
Okay, student, the next point of greeting card is generic structure. Okay, there are three generic structure of greeting card. Okay, I write on the whiteboard. The first one is the raising word. So the second one is the body or content. And the last one is the sender. Okay, here the mean of.
Sorry.
Okay, student, the next point of greeting card.
Alright, in this slide, affixes and deficiency. Alright, I'll bring you a time. Alright, here. Okay, in this slide, I use the right body language and I in accordance with the material I convey so that it's look like I master the condition of the learning class. So I deliver the learning material completely in accordance with the lesson plans and slides that I show. So I write on the whiteboard clearly, and this certainly make it easier for students to understand what I explain about the material. So the last one, I reviewed the material that I have conveyed briefly with emphasis on certain part to make it easier for students remember the material that I convey in this slide. Okay, for how about the efficiency? Like the previous slide, there was an error in writing the date on the whiteboard, which should be at number 23. There's the letter RD on it. I didn't write it down because of my carelessness. I should be able to add the letter RD at the top of the number 23 to match the rules that have been set in English. So the last one about the efficiency in this slide, I was also less careful in paying attention to the clean lines of the whiteboard before teaching, so that there was scribble on the right side of the whiteboard here, which interfered with the eyesight and also the focus of the student in following this lesson. Okay, it is like the previous slide before. Okay, we jump to the next material. Alright, in this slide we mentioned about language feature of greeting card. So I have exist and also the efficiency for this slide. I think this slide will be mentioned together with slide. Okay, for this slide I'll mention the exist and also the deficiency related with this slide. Alright, for slide 16 and 17, okay, here is 16 and the next one is 17. Okay, this is 17. Right, I use the table in this slide so that the material I convey in the form of dividing the category of language feature for greeting card look neat, and of course make it easier for students to distinguish between the category of language feature. There are 4 categories in this slide. First one is sympathy, salutation, and then the previous slides, greeting expression and wishes or prayer. Okay, for the next exist. In this slide, in the table section of this slide, I also use the table title with a different color box from the content of the table. It is make easier for students to distinguish between the title and content of the table. So at this very moment, I use a font color combination. So the title of this slide is language feature of greeting card. In the language feature section as the main title, I use red color. So for greeting card as a complement of the title generally, I use white color to make it easier for students to distinguish and understand what I emphasize in this slide. Okay, then the last one about exists in this slide and 17 slide. In the table section in this slide, it's also not too crowded. I only use one icon and also a background that describe the material which I convey. I purposely use limited icon because if I use more icon, it will make this slide and next slides crowded and not attract the attention of students. So how about the efficiency for this slide and next slide? Okay, for two slides, I have one deficiency for 2 slides. First, maybe I'm lacking here in providing an explanation that language feature of greeting card is divided into 4 categories. So here, I should be able to write an explanation or description of what category are included in the language feature at the top of table that I provide on the slide. Here, maybe I can write the description here. So here, alright, we jump to the next slide. Okay,
students. Now the last important point of greeting card is language feature. Okay, for language feature divided into 4 categories. The first one is greeting expression. So the second one is prayer or wishes. The next one is sympathy, and the last one is salutation. Okay, now we write on the whiteboard. First one is greeting expression. Okay, the meaning of greeting expression here, when we express our greet for someone, like maybe in even graduation, congratulations on your graduation, or maybe congratulations on your wedding, etc. So the second is about prayer or wishes. Okay, for prayer or wishes here is the content when we want to give our praise or our praise for someone by greeting card. Like example, wish you all the best for you, get well soon, and etc. Or the reason why the greeting card is the same for someone. So the third is about sympathy. Okay, the sympathy, it is a feeling when we want to send to someone, when someone that is celebrating or experiencing an event or in category of sadness. Like, I'm sorry to hear that, or maybe our deep sympathy for you, etc. So the last category is salutation. Okay, for salutation here, like greeting or how our greet for someone in greeting card, like the example, regard, love, so hug and kiss, and last one, your best friend Hasna or your friend blah blah blah. Okay.
Alright, in this slide, I have exist and deficiency for this slide. I tell you about the exist. First one, in this slide, I explain the material according to the lesson plan that I choose with a clear explanation, and of course, use language that is easy for student to understand. So the second, I use body language that match what I say so that it look like I master the class, and of course attract the attention of student in participating in learning. So the next one, I also give some clear example in this slide to make it easier for student to understand what are the categories of language feature in the greeting card. And the last one, I also provide written information regarding the definition, the division of this language feature in this whiteboard. Okay, how about deficiency? And then the deficiency in this slide, in writing on the whiteboard, of course, in the fourth category of language feature of greeting card, the writing is not very clear because the condition of the marker ink is not to thick, so that it hinder the student understanding and vision of what I write on the whiteboard. I shall have used another marker with thick in so that the writing in the fourth category shall be clearly seen by student. Okay, we can see here, okay, how the writing is not clearly because the ink of the marker is not thick. Okay, we jump to the next slide. Alright, in this slide I have also exist and a deficiency. Okay, I mentioned about the exist in this slide. I used an example of an invitation card that was clear and easy for student to read. So the second one, I used the question mark and exclamation mark icon in this slide to direct student to ask student about the invitation card that I displayed in this slide. So how about deficiency? So in this slide, I'm not good at exporting the icon that match what I said in this slide, so it look empty. It shall be able to add another icon that match what I said in this slide, so it doesn't look empty. So then for the background slide, it also look monotone because there is no background variation that I use. I shall be able to use other background variation that match the material I convey so that it doesn't look monotone.